One of the clearest measures of Augustus's success is not simply that he ruled for more than 4 decades, but that the political system he created, the Augustan Constitution, endured long after his death. From 30 BCE until roughly 284 CE, the basic structure of imperial government remained intact. This period includes what historians generally regard as the height of the Roman Empire, stretching from the rise of Augustus to the death of Marcus Aurelius in 180 CE. To understand why Augustus's system lasted so long, it helps to look at the emperors who ruled during these early centuries and how they operated within the framework he designed. The emperors of this era fall into 3 broad phases. First came the Julio Claudian dynasty, the family of Augustus and his immediate successors. Next followed the Flavian dynasty, which restored stability after civil war. Finally came the period later known as the Age of the 5 Good Emperors, a century of relatively stable, prosperous rule built on careful succession and competent leadership. The first emperors after Augustus were all connected to him either by blood or by marriage. Collectively, they are known as the Julio Claudians: Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero. Their reigns demonstrated both the strengths and vulnerabilities of Augustus's political settlement. Augustus's own success rested on restraint and illusion. He never ruled openly as a king. Instead, he preserved republican offices, worked closely with the Senate, and governed through persuasion, prestige, and patronage rather than fear. This approach was largely respected by his more capable successors. Tiberius and Claudius, though very different personalities, generally followed Augustus's model. They worked with traditional institutions and avoided flaunting their absolute power. Not all Julio Claudians, however, understood or accepted the careful balance Augustus had created. Caligula and Nero abandoned moderation and ruled as open tyrants. Both became increasingly erratic and violent, purging senators and ruling through fear. This was politically disastrous. Rome's elite might tolerate a dominant ruler, but they would not accept one who made them feel unsafe. Since no legal process existed for removing an emperor, repression led inevitably to conspiracy. Caligula was assassinated by members of the Praetorian Guard, who then unexpectedly elevated his uncle Claudius to the throne. Nero's end was even more telling. By turning against the aristocracy and eliminating potential heirs, he left himself isolated. In 68 CE, several provincial legates revolted against him. Abandoned, Nero committed suicide. With his death, and the near extermination of Augustus's descendants, the Julio-Claudian dynasty collapsed. Nero's fall exposed a fundamental weakness in the imperial system: the absence of a clear mechanism for succession. In practice, imperial power rested heavily on military support, especially from provincial armies. In 69 CE, 4 different generals briefly claimed the throne in rapid succession as civil war swept the empire. This traumatic interlude, remembered as the Year of the 4 Emperors, revealed just how dangerous competition among ambitious commanders could be. Stability was finally restored when one general emerged victorious: Vespasian. His reign marked the beginning of the Flavian dynasty, which included Vespasian, his son Titus, and his younger son Domitian. Vespasian proved to be a capable and pragmatic ruler. Having seized power through civil war, he governed cautiously, rebuilding imperial finances and avoiding unnecessary confrontation with the Senate. His son Titus followed in much the same spirit, earning a reputation for competence and moderation despite the disasters of his reign, including the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. However, after ruling for 2 years, he contracted a fever and died. The dynasty's final ruler, Domitian, however, gradually repeated the earlier mistakes of Caligula and Nero. Over time, he became increasingly suspicious and authoritarian, alienating the Senate and ruling through fear. In 96 CE, Domitian was assassinated in a palace conspiracy. Unlike the chaos that followed Nero's death, this time the transition was managed peacefully, a sign that the imperial system itself had matured. After Domitian's assassination, imperial authority passed smoothly to Nerva, inaugurating the period later known as the reign of the 5 Good Emperors: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius, who ruled jointly with Lucius Verus for much of his reign. What distinguished this era was not family bloodlines, but deliberate adoption. Most of these emperors had no biological sons and instead adopted competent adults, usually experienced generals or administrators, as their successors. This practice produced nearly a century of stable transitions, effective governance, efficient administration, and economic prosperity. Under these rulers, the Roman Empire reached its greatest territorial extent and enjoyed relative internal peace. The system unraveled when Marcus Aurelius broke with the adoption tradition. Choosing his biological son, Commodus, as heir, he reintroduced dynastic succession. Commodus proved unfit for rule, and his accession in 180 CE marked the end of the empire's golden age. Two fundamental conclusions emerge from this early imperial history. First, Romans would not tolerate unchecked tyranny indefinitely. An emperor might rule absolutely, but if he threatened the safety or dignity of the elite, he would eventually be removed, usually by violence. Second, because the imperial system lacked any legal method for deposing a ruler, assassination and revolt became recurring solutions. This structural flaw, built into Augustus's otherwise brilliant system, would haunt the Roman Empire for centuries.